We're moving swiftly along now. We're joined by certified relationship coach and marriage counselor, Bisi Folarin. Today, we're going to be talking about conflict resolution in marriages and, of course, relationships. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, ma'am, for having me back.
All right, then. So, conflict is something that is almost, well, we say it's common. But how common it is, still remains to be seen. And a lot of people have found ways to deal with it. But for those that are probably watching right now, and there's some sort of conflict happening in their homes right now, what sort of advice would you give them towards resolving it?
Okay, first thing I'd like everyone listening to know is conflict is almost natural, something that occurs. It's not something you can do without. So the issue is not whether conflict will arise, but how we resolve the conflict.
Okay.
So I'm going to narrow it down, talking about the home between a couple, a husband and a wife. First things first, I think every couple should understand that they are both on the same team.
Okay.
Your spouse, your husband, your wife is not the enemy and is not the devil, except in some few cases where a spouse acts that way. So you need to understand that when you're bringing an argument, you want to resolve a conflict, you're not per se talking against somebody on another team. So let's say Mr. and Mrs. Taiwo, you are on team Taiwo. So when you're presenting your argument, you're not coming, the goal is not to win an argument, the goal is to fight for the right of that marriage to exist, to keep thriving. That's the first thing you need to know. Second thing that you need to know when you're resolving conflict, there are certain words you shouldn't use.
Okay.
All right, so you want to pass across, don't use words like I. I'll call them deflectors. When you want to say there's something you did, you're always doing this, instead of saying you, use I, as in I feel beaten down each time you shout. There's a certain way I feel when you do this, as opposed to you're always doing this, you're always doing this, because using those kind of words puts the other party on the defenses.
Okay.
You also don't want to use words like you are always doing this, you never. That is such a tone of finality.
Okay.
Okay, so that gives the person the question, oh, are you saying since we've been married, I've never done this, which most times might not be correct. It's just that they often do it. So avoiding such words will help you get your message across faster. The other person has not built a wall of defense, like shut down. Second. Another thing you want to look at when resolving conflicts is deal with the issue, not the personality. Attack the issue, not the personality, because we do that a lot. Okay. That's why I said you don't use words like you. Instead, deflect. Say, I feel this way.
So you're saying treat it on a case-by-case basis?
Definitely.
Not long-term issues?
Yes. So that's like hitting below the bed when you keep bringing up past issues. You know, we're dealing with an issue now, but you're stringing it to something that's happened in the past. No, deal with issues as they happen, per time basis.
Okay.
Yes. Then another thing you want to learn how to do is to effectively, that's what we don't do a lot of time as couples, you effectively communicate what it is that is the grouse that's making you angry, as opposed to just shouting and you're not making any point.
Okay,
for women.
So that effective communication you're talking about now, obviously we're talking about using words to pass a message across.
Yes.
And sometimes I feel like there are some couples that, especially if they come from different places, different areas, or they grew up in from different backgrounds.
Definitely.
They might not have a language that is actually, making sure that those messages are communicated. So do you think there's any other way to pass these messages across?
Well, like you've already said, we come from different backgrounds, we've been shaped by different worldview and all of that. So you want to make your partner understand what it is that gets at you each time they do a certain kind of things. I'll tell women, it's not all the time that emotions and tears will bring your brains to the table. What I mean by that, if you're talking with a man, they're more logical. You probably will get your husband's attention if you've had your facts, stated out in your mind before you come presenting to him, as opposed to shouting, crying, and throwing tantrums. Okay. So bring your brains to the table, bring your points. For a lady, for a woman, you're more likely to get across to your husband. He's more likely to listen. Oh, okay. This thing she says, he might not agree on the spot, but he probably would think about it, as opposed to just coming and fighting. You're not going to be making any headway that way. Okay. And then when resolving conflicts, be quick to apologize and also receive apology. It's one thing for one spouse to apologize, another thing for the other to say, I'm just not accepting it, because this is how it works. When you apologize, and the person that apologizes is not necessarily the party that is wrong. Okay. It just means I value this relationship, I value what we share above my ego. That I'm apologizing does not necessarily mean I'm wrong. It just means I value this relationship more than my ego at this point. And so when a spouse is willing to go that length to apologize, even when they are not the wrong party, you should be willing to also accept it as in knowing fully well that, oh, not necessarily, this person being wrong.
Okay, I want to make reference to sources of conflict that are recurrent.
Okay.
So if, for instance, you have conflict with financial issues or conflict with in-laws issues, and it's a constant recurrent source of conflict, what would you advise?
It means you guys haven't really sat down to talk about the nitty-gritty and come to a resolution. Okay. So you might need to, whoever is the aggrieved party, you might need to sit down. Let me assume it's the wife that has issues with in-laws coming, not helping out in the house, but always eating the food and leaving plates dirty. You want to pick that up with your husband. There is something about timing and resolution. Okay. We need to learn timing. It's not all the time the other party is open to that discussion. So you have to look for a right time and then understand that if it gets heated to a point, you don't have to necessarily continue that conversation at that point. Let tempers cool out if they have to. Okay. But whenever you're bringing up, make sure you're saying exactly what it is. Don't bring anger to the table. Bring your logic, bring your reasoning. When you do that, then you have to insist that moving forward, what are we resolving to do at this point? Okay. When these people come, this is what I expect. I expect that they help out in the house. I expect that they eat, they have to wash their dishes. Communicate that to your husband and make sure you guys reach a resolution, especially since you want to get a response from him. Make sure he's saying something definite.
What about enforcing those new rules that you've put together with your spouse, for instance? Enforcing it to prevent conflict, could be a problem for the spouse. What would you advise in that case? I
would advise that the spouse receiving that complaint or that grievance should make a mental look. And the person who also brought it, whenever you feel there's a flaw, you just gently remind, sweetheart, we actually talked about this, you forgive me. Oh, I'm sorry, I will, work better on it moving forward. Don't always expect a sudden change. Sometimes it will be gradual and sometimes it will be immediate. You should appreciate that too.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of different types of relationships now. So for instance, a business relationship, okay, right? Where two different businesses come together to work on a project. They often project forward into the future and look out for different sources of conflict, and they draw up some kind of agreement.
Beforehand.
Can this work with marriages and relationships?
Well, not in such a rigid form, but yeah, it should work if you have respect for that union. Like I say, you want this to move forward. The goal is not to win a fight. The goal is to fight for the thriving of this union. Okay. So it can actually work.
So you can actually sit down and look into the future and think about things that could be.
Oh yes, while you're cutting, those are part of what you should be doing. You should be projecting. That's why you have like some 12 questions you really need to sit down and answer. Not just, okay, what do we do? They will have A, B, C, D to like F if they have to. So.
Wow, different options.
Yeah, so I mean, you how do I say, what's the word? You simulate, if this happens, okay, what do you think we can do about it? You should have those discussions while cutting.
I have to say thank you to you once again. I have a feeling someone learned a thing or two today and have a few pointers that they jotted down on how to resolve different types of conflict. We have to wrap it up now. Please visit our social media pages with the hashtag WakeUpNigeria on TVC and put your comments right there. We have to take a quick break. Wake Up Nigeria continues after this.